Welcome back to my channel Knowledge Chronicle.
Think about the last decision you made. Maybe you reached for water, smiled, or remembered a face. All of that happened because tiny cells called neurons fired electrical signals across a vast network inside your head. Today, we'll strip the mystery: what neurons are, how they communicate, the types that run your body, how the brain talks to itself, and what happens when this system breaks down. Clear, fast, no nonsense. Let's go. What is a neuron? Well, a neuron is a specialized cell built to send and receive information. Imagine a tree. The dendrites are the branches that catch incoming messages. The cell body, or soma, houses the nucleus and processes the input. The axon is the long trunk that carries the message away. And the axon is often wrapped in myelin, which is an insulating layer that speeds things up. Between the myelin segments are gaps called nodes of Ranvier. They let the electrical signal jump, making transmission faster. One example, a motor neuron in your leg has a long axon that reaches from your spine to your foot. That's why a single neuron can control movement across big distances. How neurons fire? Action potential, explained simply. Neurons communicate using an action potential, which is basically an electrical pulse. At rest, the inside of the neuron is negatively charged compared to the outside, and that's called the resting potential, thanks to ions like sodium and potassium and the sodium-potassium pump. When enough input pushes the membrane past a threshold, voltage-gated sodium channels open, sodium rushes in, the membrane depolarizes, and an action potential travels down the axon. Then potassium channels open to repolarize the cell and restore balance. Think dominoes. Once the first domino falls or the threshold is reached, the wave runs down the whole line. Synaptic transmission, the chemical handshake. Neurons don't actually touch. The tiny gap between the axon terminal and the next cell is called the synapse. Most synapses are chemical. When an action potential arrives, it triggers vesicles to release neurotransmitters. Chemicals like acetylcholine, dopamine, GABA, or glutamate. These cross the synapse, bind to receptors on the next cell, and either excite it, which is called an EPSP, or inhibit it, which is an IPSP. After their job, neurotransmitters are removed by reuptake transporters or broken down by enzymes. There are also electrical synapses, direct channels for very fast connections, but they're less common. For example, touching a hot stove causes sensory neurons to send a signal to the spinal cord. Interneurons process it, and motor neurons send a rapid command to pull your hand away. That's synaptic transmission in action. Alright, so let's talk about the types of neurons and, who does what. Sensory or afferent, neurons are the ones that bring information in. Things like temperature, light, or pain. Motor or efferent, neurons send commands out to your muscles and glands. Then we've got interneurons, which connect neurons within the central nervous system and actually handle most of the brain's processing. There are also some specialized examples, like pyramidal neurons in the cortex that help with decision-making, and Purkinje cells in the cerebellum that coordinate really precise movements. How the brain communicates, networks and chemistry. Well, the brain isn't just a collection of isolated neurons. It's really about networks and circuits. Groups of neurons form pathways and, oscillations. Those are brainwaves that actually synchronize activity across different regions. Chemical systems like dopamine for reward and movement, or acetylcholine for attention and memory, tune how these networks behave. For example, playing the piano trains circuits that link your sensory input, motor output, and memory. So, in a very real sense, practice literally rewires those networks. When the network breaks, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, things can get pretty tough. Parkinson's disease is caused by the loss of dopamine-producing neurons in a region called the substantia nigra. The result? Tremor, slowness, and rigidity. Treatments like levodopa and deep brain stimulation can ease symptoms, but unfortunately, they don't cure the loss of neurons. Alzheimer's disease, on the other hand, involves a buildup of amyloid plaques and tau tangles that destroy synapses and neurons, especially in memory regions like the hippocampus. This leads to progressive memory loss and cognitive decline. Drugs can slow the symptoms a bit, But honestly, we're still fighting to find out how to stop the underlying degeneration. Modern touch, brain-computer interfaces, or BCI. This is a cutting-edge idea connecting neurons directly to machines. BCIs read brain signals, either non-invasively using EEG or invasively with implanted electrodes, and translate them into commands. This means controlling robotic arms, cursors, or prosthetic limbs just by thinking. For example, someone with paralysis can move a robotic arm just by thinking about it. But there are challenges, like signal clarity, biocompatibility, and of course, privacy and ethics. This isn't science fiction, it's actually happening now. But there are still some pretty big technical and moral questions to answer. Neurons are simple in design, but wow, they form complexity far beyond the sum of their parts. From reflexes to thought, memory to will, it's really these tiny electrical pulses and chemical switches that run you. So, respect them, study them, and remember, when neurons malfunction, lives can change. Science is making progress, but there's still a long road ahead. And hey, your one like, share, and subscribe will help us create more valuable content.